Now, I've been known for my slander. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. What's up, guys? I'm Gojo here, and here to do a breakdown / live reaction review to Heavy Weather's. And I believe if the other video, which Heavy Weather was on Gamblrr's channel, was I think it'll be Heavy Weather's and Restless Gamblrr's Hakari versus every special grade sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen. And I'll admit, I've more so, I don't know, once again, I've either hardened on some characters or softened on some characters, and especially their scaling, now that the series has been over for a while, and I've just been, thinking and reviewing and writing my own scripts and stuff like that. So, I don't know, I'm a little bit intrigued. I'll tell you what I think on the top of the dome piece in a second, so let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Are you ready? Oh, you're not? Dude, come on now. Please be ready at this point. You have no more time. Editing me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. I think. Go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do have been to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Hakari Kenshi, as I mentioned in his own little video, is quite nightmarish. Feels mean, but I feel like it's accurate. He's quite nightmarish in terms of scaling, right? Because I did a whole video on it, which will probably be linked somewhere, but essentially I talked about how Hakari is kind of sort of a statement and narrative merchant, in heavy degrees when you think about it, just because his only real scaling to any characters that we have of any note, such as Yuta and Kotsu, come from statements. And the only battles he has are against people who only have real narrative supporting them, like Kashimo and Urume. Actually no, I've found that it's Arame. I've been saying Urume wrong this entire time, but Arame and Kashimo, both extremely powerful characters according to their narratives and what other characters say about them. Arame is described as a monster, a beast, a creature, an animal, and notably, they do, for the most part, kind of take Hakari for a walk, but at the same time Hakari walks them back, so they're clearly relative. And obviously they fought for the entirety of the Shinjuku Showdown after Gojo fell. And then you have Kashimo Hajime, someone else who basically lost to Hakari, but essentially was going high relative with him. And then Kashimo has his whole narrative of being the strongest, and the strongest in the Edo period in particular, where we know Ryu existed, but then again, they never fought, so we don't actually know their scale. And then, of course, Hakari Kenji himself, he has the whole idea of, at least according to Yuta, Kotsu, and then by proxy Satoru to Gojo, him and Yuta are relative, when both are at full power, when both are at full power, it's kind of weird, because when Yuta makes a statement, you could just easily argue, let's just jackpot Hakari above Yuta, individually. Not to talk about Rika, but then again, you always talk about Yuta and Rika as a combo piece, and Yuta's full power is never necessarily mentioned. So, you could definitely argue fully manifested Rika's off the table, and I wouldn't even knock you for that. In fact, I personally believe that. So, still, that's, a real good stuff. Cool stories, bro. Multiple. Cool stories, plural. But, where the feet's at? And I ain't talking about your toes. No, where the feet's at? You got the J's covering them up. Where the feet's at? And obviously the feats are on the other people's statements. And Hakari is a statement man himself. So it's do you just accept that? And if so, then fine. And honestly, I've come to the point where I'm just fine. I think the narrative got a little bit too heavy with it. With it being only disavowed by Maki and not liked because we don't have the feats, that's it. I can't. Both Yuta and Gojo said it. And sure, Maki once again disavows Yuta's statement, but hate to do this to my glorious queen, she cannot be used if Gojo and Yuta are saying it. And there's an external statement. And I think even recent character descriptions, Hakari's been described that way. So overall, it's too much evidence. It's the only in-universe burden of proof that we have against it is Maki, who probably doesn't know either of their full power, considering she hasn't seen Yuta in a year, and doesn't know Hakari that well, or at least I presume not. I highly doubt Hakari and Jackpot was running up against pre-awakening Maki. For what reason would they be fighting? And just Gojo. If Gojo says it, I gotta buy it, right? If he says it, I gotta believe it. So overall, Hakari's scaling is messy, but if you go with that, then he does have a really good argument against both special grades once he gets in the Jackpot. Obviously, base Hakari's he's kind of wacky. I wouldn't say, but no one argues base Hakari. I've yet to see, unless you're, doing backward scaling for Hakari versus, the disaster curses and, anyone of that tier, then you'll see, base Hakari come up in arguments because of, the fight with Yuji. But base Hakari isn't really talked about. It's always Jackpot Hakari. And once he gets in the Jackpot, it's pretty much assumed he's going to loop Jackpot. We always give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to be on a roll. I never heard anyone do an Hakari versus battle where, oh no, Hakari, in this third round of jackpot, after his opponent survived like 12 minutes and 33 seconds, beat him. Or I don't know, like he failed to hit that last one and then they got him. Like, no one, we just assume he's just on a roll. So essentially, we think of infinite jackpot Hakari, or at least him starting a jackpot. And if you go with those statements, he's pretty darn valid. That would give him scaling directly to Sukuna. That would give him scaling directly to Yuta, obviously. Well, at least a suppressed Sukuna. I'll say that blatantly. A suppressed Sukuna, the same one that fought Yuta, and stuff like that. Like, so, like, he gets pretty beefy and pretty meaty. And if you go with, like, how the verse works with Curse Energy Reinforcement, like, he can get pretty devious. It's just that he's such a pillow puncher. Like, his AP is the only thing that's, like, so weird to scale. And, of course, it's because Urarame has RCT. So, like, obviously, the damage wouldn't be permanent, and I don't see Urarame taking much damage. That's the thing. We don't see enough of their fight to determine how much of Hakari's AP is, like, actually valid, to the point where, like, oh, no, he can actually damage these high-tier threats, high-tier narrative threats, like Urarame. Because, like, every time we see them, he doesn't actually do damage. He throws them around a lot, but we never even see the steam of RCT coming off Urarame, which implies that, like, he's not doing any damage to them. So, like, I don't know. It's kind of funky. And with Kashimo, same thing. Of course, you could argue Hakari was holding back a bunch, but then, okay, he clearly wasn't strong enough to one-shot Kashimo then. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit weird, it's a little bit freaky. But after they skilled Kashimo, after I've, like, once again, kind of opened my eyes more and been more accepting of his scaling too, or, like, if you, once again, do the narrative statement scaling and just stack on narratives on top of narratives in a way, it's like calc stacking both narratives, then I can technically see an argument for Hakari against Yuki, especially considering I don't see Yuki offing him. Like, ever. Maybe domain clash, but even then Hakari's domain is described to be good in domain clashes, so possibly not. I could see Yuki literally just running out of energy and Hakari eventually beating her. Same thing with someone like Geto. Geto may be able to spam Hakari to oblivion, but I don't think anything Geto has, except for maybe the love beam. Not the love beam. His Uzumaki would be enough to, like, do lethal damage to Hakari while he's in a mortal state, and not just going to be able to loop another jackpot, especially since Geto has no domain counters. Maybe Curse Spirits, but still, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's any Curse Spirit confirmed in Geto's arsenal that could, like, take out jackpot Hakari, or even really do much to base Hakari, who's apparently a monster too, relative to special grades at least, based on the scaling to Yuji. And then, obviously, I mean, I've heard, I don't know, I may do that, because shockingly enough, I was looking through my catalog as I write more scripts. I'm like, did I ever do that? I don't think I ever really sat down and addressed Hakari versus Yuta fully, but, like, once again, just opening my mind to the broader sense of scaling and just being like, if I squint at it, I can see ways, but notably, I will give it to Yuta more times than not, like, 8 times. Like, I can see Hakari winning 2 out of 10 times, maybe 1 out of 10 times. I don't know. I'm a Yuta yucker. To the day I go, to many people's shock horror. I feel I still jump scare people whenever I say this. Like, oh, I'm a huge Yuta fan. I'm like, huh? But trust me, I'd be glazing, bro. And obviously, like, what are the special grades? Kenny, I think Hakari gets domain diff. But then again, if I'm being honest, Kenny's scaling is kind of non-existent. He's also kind of a narrative merchant, but that's another video for another time. Overall, and then and he's not beating Gojo. So I don't know. I'm interested. If I'm gonna make a guess before I hop into the video itself, I think they're gonna say he beats Yuki, because Yuki's kind of like Yuki and Geto, unless you use, like, the volume 0 Rika scaling. Like, Geto's probably, like, the weakest. I'm assuming they recover him first. I think they had him as the weakest last time too, because he doesn't have a domain. So they're probably gonna have him beating Geto. Probably gonna have him beating Yuki. Probably gonna have him going high diff with Yuta. Probably gonna have him lose to Kenjaku, and obviously he loses to Gojo. And if Sukuna's mentioned, obviously he loses to Sukuna. So, like, those are my pre-thoughts. Sorry for yapping so much. Let me actually hop into the video itself.
With the Jujutsu Kaisen manga finally entering its conclusion, pretty much every character in the cast has gotten their chance to shine, with Yuta, Maki, and Yuji especially getting a lot of attention in their fights with Sukuna. However, there is a specific character who, for the last few months, hasn't really done much: Hakari. Jujutsu High suspended 3rd year, and one of the strongest sorcerers of the modern era has been relatively absent during the current arc of JJK. We've only really gotten 1 chapter with Hakari as the main focus, which was months ago, and then his last appearance, his fight with Ume ended in a pretty underwhelming manner. Because of this, a lot of people have begun to downplay him. In this video, me and Restless Gamblrr are going to go over how Hakari would do in a fight against the full registered special grades, those being Geto, Yuki, Yuta, and Gojo. We're also going to be doing Kenjaku, since him being in Geto's body means he technically is a special grade sorcerer, so yeah, we might as well include him. Last thing before we get into the matchups, if you enjoy watching the video, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, as that
like the video,
and that means I'll be able to get more videos out, so it's a win-win for both of us. And of course, also subscribe to Restless Gamblr's channel as well. His link will be in the description. The first fight we're going to be talking about is
sorry, her cage music, but yeah, okay. And also subscribe to Heavy Weather. I'm subscribed. I looked up and I'll subscribe. And obviously, I'm subscribed to Gamblrr. Let me see. He's dropped some One Piece videos recently, and honestly, it may be Gamblrr alone that's gonna get me into One Piece. Because I'm like, gosh darn, I want to understand. Like, I understand, but I don't understand. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I get it, but I don't get it. I have so much weird secondary knowledge of One Piece. Like, I think I know all the major plot points. I think I do. But even then, I don't. So, like, I need to just sit down, buckle down, and read it. Because, like, if I could eat all of Dandadan in, like, 3 days, I could probably eat One Piece in, like, 2 weeks. If I have time, if I have freedom, probably less, but I don't have time, nor the freedom. But still, I could probably know that. I'll see. Because I'd love to review One Piece on the channel, but I completely wiped all One Piece content on the channel the last time. I think it was Shueisha. Just came down from the heavens. It was like, ah! And the enemy trying to take the channel. And I was like, ah! So I'll see. I may, for that and that exclusively, I may, if I do live reactions, I may just draw an image from the chapter for those chapters, just so the heavens don't bear down upon me. I'll see. But let's see.
Hakari versus Geto. Geto is probably considered by most people to be the weakest of the 4 special grades, and I mean, this makes sense, right? He has no RCT, no domain, and most of his feats come from very early into the series. It also doesn't help that we have Kenjaku, who's basically just Geto but improved in every single area. However, this doesn't mean that Geto is weak or anything. Even though he lost to Volume 0 Yuta, it was later stated that had Geto used all of his curses in this fight against Yuta, he most likely would have won. And in this fight against Hakari, we will be using a hypothetical Geto with all of his curses just
yeah, and you know, one thing, because like, I have 2 Kenjaku versus battles in the tank. I have a Geto scaling video, and I have a Geto versus battle in the tank. Like, I'm cooking, I'm preparing, because darn it, the year's ended way too fast. I'm like, darn, I barely have time. I haven't finished my avatars yet for next year. I haven't finished the channel banner for next year. Like, I am working at Mach 5, trying to get everything done. And a big thing I'm trying to do is versus battles. So I'm trying to the main plan for versus battles is to get a whole bunch of them done before the end of this year. So just like every Monday or whatever day. I may keep it Monday, I may change it, but like every day, every week, there's a versus battle. So I would need 52 versus battles pre-done. But I don't think I'm going to get 52 done because I don't have that much time. But at least if I can get like 10 in advance, if I can get maybe 12 would leave me covered through March. And then I'd be good. But then I get complacent. So I'm going to go for as many as I can fit in. But I have a couple Geto ones in there, and I have a couple Kenjaku in there. And the thing is, it's so much hypothetical. It's like the Kakashi with the 1,000 jutsu thing. Like, yeah, dude, you're known for your variety. But on screen, you got like 10. And I can't just come and be like, oh, you can perform this jutsu. Oh, and this jutsu. And oh, this jutsu. And this will match up perfectly. Like, it's nice. We're doing versus battles, right? So it's hypotheticals on hypotheticals anyway. But Geto and Kenjaku are even worse with that. Because we could say, oh, they have special grade curse that does this thing. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it isn't. And we'll never know. Because Gege's not going to drop all that lore. Because why would they? And the big thing about those two is that basically against any of the high tiers, especially the top tiers in the verse, and then definitely the god tiers, but against any of like the top tiers in the verse, curse spirit manipulation doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter to Yuki. It really shouldn't matter to Yuta, because he can literally spit on them. He only struggled with Kurushu because he was hiding the RCT spit, but he can hard CT spit every single curse spirit that's ever thrown at him. Maki has been shown already to blitz. How many curse spirits were held in the Zenin clan area well before she awakened? And she like one-shot all of them in 2 seconds? So unless Kenny or Geto's pulling out like 50 different special grades, which they may or may not have, we don't know. Probably not doing anything. Against Takaba, it doesn't do anything. Clearly, we've been seen that. Yuji probably just mollywops all curse spirits. Like, that's the thing. Against any of the top tiers, heavy hitters or above, the curse spirits are irrelevant. And from the ones we know of him, they're still irrelevant because we don't know what Yamamoto no Tomoe does, or whatever that thing's called. No idea. And I mean, the catfish one was cool. That seems unique and possibly applicable, but we never see it used again. I don't know. Same thing with it's the catfish one that makes Yuji fall down. And then I think it's just like a flood of curses that does a whole bunch of damage to Yuji. But then again, that's an extremely fatigued Shibuya Yuji. Every single top tier clears that man. Some with very little effort. So like, I don't know. Let's see.
Everything's fair. So in regards to the fight itself, I'm just going to be honest and say it's not looking too good for Geto. In terms of physical stats, he's completely outmatched by Hakari. And we have a pretty direct line of scaling for this. Volume 0 Yuta on his own is able to basically blitz Geto through sheer speed, and even though you could say it was because Geto was surprised by Yuta's speed increase, the way Hige draws the panel, we can see Geto realize that Yuta's moving faster, and despite this, he still wasn't able to react. The way this links to Hakari is because there are multiple statements that imply that when it comes down to overall stats, like speed for example, Hakari should be around the same level as current Yuta.
If not faster. Once again, well, I mean, it depends, because Yuta says he's stronger, and then Hakari says Gojo said they're on the same level. But just, once again, I always go back to how cursed energy reinforcement works. It's your base body, plus your amount of cursed energy. Infinite cursed energy. Boundless cursed energy. Yuta, physically weak. Hakari, physically strong. You buff them both up. Infinite and boundless. Bada bing, bada boom, Hakari's stronger. But, the one thing I'll give Geto, and this is one of the big focal points of the Geto video and the Geto versus battle. Sure, Yuta goes absolutely buku bonkers on Geto in this fight. But you know who else is there? Fully manifested, bloodlusted Prime Rika. If you're in the camp that Rika got weaker by JJK0, then, or no, after JJK0, because she no longer has Rika Orimoto's soul in her, Geto, he blocks and manhandles, and I forget if he hits away, but he like deals with Yuta and Rika at the same time, which is, sure, a weaker Yuta, but arguably a stronger Rika. So like, I think it balances itself out. It's honestly a really good physical feat, because remember who Rika is swinging evenly with. Remember who Rika, when unmanifested, mind you, can throw around when she's in her husk state, not her full soul state. She knocked away Ryu. Of course, Ryu got back and knocked her right back, but still, that's a thing that happens. Mr. Highest output, highest defense in the verse, Ryu Ishigori, was getting knocked around by Rika and was going relative with Ryu. And at the same time, unmanifested Rika, who I don't think gets the domain amp that Yuta does, because that'd be kind of weird. Not impossible, but kind of weird. Guess what? She throws around Sukuna. Admittedly, Sukuna, who isn't fighting too hard. Like, he's legit holding his hands together. So he's not fighting off the most, but still, she manhandles him. And Geto's able to deal with that. Fully manifested and arguably stronger. Personally, just because there's, like, other than the fact that she's a husk, there's no real implication is that Rika got weaker and or stronger after JJK0. Like, the only difference is, like, sometimes she's in her subdued state, sometimes she's in her awakened state. But, like, that's it. But even still, if it's either uniform, slightly weaker, or slightly stronger, Geto manhandling fully manifested Rika, being able to hold his own, that's pretty darn impressive. That's nothing to sneeze at, physically. And stat-wise, dare I say Hakari doesn't have anything to prove that? Like, relativity to Yuta, but not Rika. I don't think Hakari hits harder than Ryu. I don't think anybody does. So, like, unironically, I mean, you could argue it's Playful Cloud, but remember, Playful Cloud doesn't do anything for you. It's just like an extension of your own physical strength. So, essentially, defensively, you could make a pretty solid argument that Hakari would kind of be locked in the same Pillow Puncher scenario, but he'd eventually win. Right? Because even if he's doing chip damage to Geto, which presumably he would be doing if Geto's physical stats are anywhere near relative to fully manifested Rika, as they seem to be in Zero, then maybe, just maybe, I'm saying just maybe, I'm saying just maybe, Hakari would have to fight for like an hour. Just like, he doesn't have any AP. That's the annoying thing. Unless you upscale, but then again, every single time you upscale Yuta, who we know is weaker than Rika, we just accidentally upscale Geto. Like, it's a weird circle jerk. Trust me, it's like the weirdest thing ever. You try to raise Hakari, but then by proxy you raise Yuta, but then by proxy you raise Rika, which then backward fuels Geto, who you're trying to raise Hakari above. It's super weird to think about, but ever since I thought of that, I was like, oh, well, maybe I've been sleeping on Geto. Maybe I've been sleeping on Big Jock. Maybe they are just like that for real. But of course, that's just me.
Not only does Gojo himself imply their relative when he says they should only step into the fight if he gets weakened to the point Hakari or Yuta could take him, but Kenjaku as well also groups Hakari, Yuta, and Maki together, which insinuates they're at a similar level when he refers to them as the three heavy hitters. We can use this to link Yuta and Hakari's speed since Hakari is entirely a hand-to-hand fighter. It means for him to be in a similar...
The heavy hitter statement is so weird. Because, like, they're all... I mean, yeah, they are JJK's heavy hitters. They are Jujutsu High's heavy hitters. So, like, who else we're going to include? Choso? Like, obviously Yuji, but still. Honestly. Yeah, I can see it. And they all have their own perks. Yuta has the 2v1, Hakari has the best RCT and immortality, and Maki has, like, the best... I'd say the best combat speed and reaction speed. Or, if they're all relative in terms of all their stats, right? Let's say everyone's relative, then Maki's precognition from her perception puts her above in speed and combat. That's how I'd put it. If we're taking the heavy hitters thing as they're all relative, and they could all basically be subbed out in their respective positions except for their specialties. So like, Yuta needs to be there fighting Sukuna because he has the domain to trap him down with Jacob's Ladder. Hakari needs to be fighting Arame because Arame is the one with the dangerous one-shot ice attacks that can do damage to anybody. But he can heal all of them, and he can consistently domain loop them. And Maki needs to show up when Maki shows up because she's naturally a sneak merchant and does not have any way to immediately heal off things. So that's like she needs to appear very sneakily and do very sneaky things in order to get sneaky results. Like, I see the vision. I see the vision.
Level to Yuta, he'd have to at the very least have similar speed, if not be faster. Yuta has multiple curse techniques, has an extremely lethal domain, and has Rika to make it a 2v1. And despite this, it still implied Hakari should be able to somewhat keep up with him. And again, since Hakari is a hand-to-hand fighter, the only way for him to do that would be for him to at least be in the same tier of Yuta when it comes to speed. With that out of the way, there is a very noticeable speed gap between Hakari and Geto. Hakari should be relative to current Yuta, who's faster than Sendai Yuta, who's faster than Volume 0 Yuta, and then that Yuta was able to blitz Geto. This can also be applied to the AP, with Volume 0 Yuta being able to damage Geto and Hakari scaling way above that. The only chance Geto really has is to either try to overwhelm Hakari with his curses before Hakari hits a jackpot, or manage to land a maximum Uzumaki on base Hakari. The problem with the first argument is that the strength of Geto's special grade curses are left pretty ambiguous.
Yeah.
In fact, we only really know about one of them, which is a special grade Toto defeated, and this is Toto before the beginning of the series, so it's a weaker version of Toto, and he also had just fought 3 other grade 1s, meaning he was probably fatigued, and even then, this nerfed version of Toto was still able to take out one of Geto's special grades. Obviously, Geto might have stronger ones, but since it's never actually stated or implied, I find it very hard to believe any of them will be able to give Hakari any trouble. It's also likely Geto just wouldn't be able to summon all of his curses while also having to fight off Hakari at close range. As for Uzumaki, even though it is an extremely powerful move, it doesn't seem to be that fast. Kusakabe was able to jump in front of Kenjaku and activate Simple Domain all within the time frame of Kenjaku charging his Uzumaki, and that's considering the fact Kusakabe is slower than Kenjaku. Hakari, who's faster than Geto, would probably be able to either pressure Geto enough so he wouldn't have the opportunity to use Uzumaki, or if Geto does attempt to use it, Hakari can just straight up close the distance and start beating him up. Even if Geto does manage to shoot Uzumaki, we know its speed should be somewhat relative to Rika's Blast, and by extension Ryu's Granite Blast, which Yuta was able to casually dodge. And since Hakari is in the same level of speed, he should also be able to do the same. So I don't want to say Geto gets slammed, but he does kinda get slammed. As I said previously, he might be able to get a win if he can overwhelm Hakari with his curses before Hakari hits a jackpot, but even then, Hakari was able to survive long enough to hit a jackpot against both Kashimo and Uraume, which just makes it extremely unlikely that Geto's curses, which are at best not even as strong as Toto at the beginning of the series, would be able to kill Hakari in base, something 2 other special grid characters were unable to do.
Yuki Sakuma.
It's Gamblrr. But that's the thing, right? And like, this is a question, because I saw a little bit of it in the last video where we talked about Geto, which was I think it was the Gamblrr video. I haven't racked in a little bit, but what do you all do about like that whole circular situation? Because the real question is, do you think that Rika and Yuta are relative? Do you think that Rika can get stronger? Do you think that the husk is stronger than the full-bodied version, or vice versa? If any of these things are the case, like unless you think Yuta is faster but weaker than Rika, I just don't think that's the case. Like, I think Rika is just she's Yuta but better stat-wise. Like, she's faster, stronger, more durable, all that. Like, that's at least what's implied to me. The only thing that is vague is speed, though. But even then, I'd say Rika and Yuta are always relative. I don't think there's any time where Yuta moves particularly faster than Rika, or Rika moves particularly faster than Yuta. So at least stat-wise, I'd say their speed is relative, but Rika's Dura and AP is higher. So like, if they've always been that's the thing. Yuta does throw a wrench into that. But then again, you can just argue Yuta may have not gotten that much stronger. Especially considering like the only thing that seems to be possibly increased for him is his Dura, at least by the time of Sendai, or not by the time of Sendai, by the time of Shinjuku, because that's the only thing Sukuna notes. And he's seen Yuta, but then again, he hasn't seen Yuta. It's weird. It's very weird. Once again, I'll think about it. I'll probably just make a full discussion video talking about that, because that will also have like heavy implications on the versus battle I'm doing. But let's see.
Mo is someone people rate rather high, and obviously for good reason. She was a special grade sorcerer even before Gojo and Geto. She has a broken curse technique and many other techniques that prove useful in battle. To be honest, I always respected her and put her above a lot of people. So how would she fare against someone like Hakari? Let's get into it. Yuki's main attribute when it comes to battle is her overwhelming power. Almost nothing else matters when her punches literally breaks concepts. In chapter 205, Kenjaku summons Ganesha, a cursed spirit that removes all obstacles in the way by entangling a concept on said obstacle. We saw this being used literally 4 chapters prior to the Fodder Soldiers of America, with Ganesha teleporting them into the air and dropping them. This same thing was meant to work on Yuki, but with one kick of Garuda, Ganesha was exercised. We find out that the reason Ganesha couldn't remove Garuda as an obstacle was because Yuki applied so much mass to it that there wasn't any concept that could contain it. In this case, there wasn't any concept that could make it move out of the way. She then goes around Kenjaku to punch him, to which he reacts and attempts to block, but both of his arms literally get deleted and he's still punched through Tengen's barrier. I think it's safe to assume that Yuki has the strongest punches outside of Black Flash's in the entire series. No one would come close to a full power Yuki's punch. But notice how I emphasize full power. Yuki at the beginning of the battle is a huge threat, but during her fight with Kenjaku, we find out her weakness. After Kenjaku uses domain expansion on her and heavily damages her from being able to literally destroy concepts with her punches, now Kenjaku's taking kicks directly to the head and barely suffering any injuries. It's stated that because she's hurt, the output of her curse technique, Star Rage, is lower, so you would think healing up would fix it, but no, she continues to pile attacks on Kenjaku, but now they're so weak, Kenjaku takes 2 direct punches to the head, maneuvers around the 3rd punch, and goes on to hit her with 2 mini Izumakis. When it came to speed, while she doesn't get slower from adding mass to herself, she hasn't shown any good speed feats. The first punch I talked about earlier was basically a surprise attack from around Kenjaku and through Ganesha, so a blind spot. But despite this, Kenjaku turned around and then blocked it. Now, here's something I realized a while ago that I didn't think made much sense, but it's just completely stated. Kenjaku's stats are equal to Geto's stats. As much as I...
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy thing. I need to make a video on that too, because that's also very important. It's true. I mean, keep kind of silent, but yeah, that's the big thing with Yuki. But that's also the big thing with the Yuki and Hakari matchup, right? Because where's Hakari's English? Where's Hakari's AP at? Where is it? Can you find it for me? Because I can't find it. I don't see it anywhere. Surely not here. It's not in the Arame fight. It's not in the Kashimo fight. The AP, it's not existent. Your Honor, where's the AP? Your Honor, where's the AP? Like, legitimate, where is it? Sure, once Yuki takes damage, her output goes booty meat. But remember, like, notably, I've been flipping back and forth on where I think Yuki is. I've seen people have her in top 10. I've seen people have her in top 5. I've seen people have her in top 15. I've seen people have her not even in the top 15, which I do think is a little, that's a little crazy. She's a domain having sorcerer. Like, whoa. Dropping her out of the top 15, maybe kind of wild. But if it's her Ryu, I'm taking my glorious king. I think, it's so weird. But I want to say my glorious king Ryu. But of course, that's me being a Ryu writer. But that aside, the only thing we see her take immense damage from that does admittedly tank Star Rage immediately. It goes from, whoa, this is crazy, can one-shot most of the verse. Because remember, once again, Geto in Zero is able to block and redirect fully manifested, presumably kind of sort of maybe bloodlusted Rika. That's a full Rika, like that. That's a little bit bukubakas, if you will. And Kenny was the same stats as Geto, gets arms snap completely. So like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Would one-shot Hakari in base and to probably do serious damage to jackpot Hakari. And the thing is, with that being the only thing we've seen do real lethal damage to her, and the other thing being, I don't know, other Uzumakis, one of which she face tanks, by the way. Then she has her guts blown out, like a lot of the fandom wants to do Yuki. But still, like after that, that's it. Kenny doesn't really damage her with any of the regular hits. And admittedly, he is playing defense over joining that fight, so he doesn't really have a chance to damage her. But that's the thing. I'm not sure I can sit here, look you directly in the face, and say that Hakari punches as hard as Kenjaku's sure hit domain expansion. I don't think I can do that. At the same time, I also don't think I can sit here, look you directly in your soul, and be like, oh yeah, Hakari, he punches and kicks as hard as mini Uzumakis. And be like, what, they're mini? And I'm like, yeah, they are mini, but still, that's a maximum technique. Do I really think Hakari hits as hard as maximum techniques? Where? How? Like, I would have to once again, like, reach into the bag. I'd have to reach into the statement bag and be like, relative to Yuta, relative to Maki. Look at these feats. You slide down the table and I'm like, oh, okay, so his AP is there. But then, that's so weird. I don't like it. But then again, it does kind of make sense because a lot of Yuta's AP, weirdly enough, comes from slicing. Like, Sure, Yuta does make Sukuna spit up a little bit of blood when he punches, and he does legit, like, tear out Sukuna's tongues. That's also pretty impressive, like, just, like, pulling feet. But still, feet-wise, I'd say none of the heavy hitters, except for, like, Yuji, once he awakens, have, like, crazy physical feats. Do they? At least with their, like, hands. Like, Maki always relies on SSK, which just negates their ability, so, like, it's hard to scale her AP anywhere off of that. She just punch Nalia around, but she doesn't really do anything. And Yuta, with his bare hands, like, he makes Sukuna's belly mouth spit up and he tears out his tongue, but, like, is that, like, would a maximum Uzumaki also not do that to Sukuna? If not better? Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's very weird, scaling-wise. And the reason I bring all this up is because of Yuki and her one-fight wonderness. If you think her Dura is booty meat, and you think by proxy Hakari would be able to damage her enough to drop her output to trash and he'd eventually just wear her out, then fine. But if you think Hakari doesn't really have any solid physical AP feats, he has big scale feats, like he throws people through buildings, but cool story, bro, it does no damage. Like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And honestly, I could see Yuki one-shotting basic hard. And then, like, consistently one-shotting Jackpot if you think they're at all relative. Which isn't insane, but if I had to hazard a guess where Game was about to go with this, since Kenny and Geto have the exact same stats, and they've already covered the idea that they think Hakari blitzes Geto, because the Rika idea just wasn't mentioned. I don't blame. I only thought about it recently myself for some reason. So, like, with that being the case, I'm assuming Kenny relative to Geto, booty meat, gets blitzed because of the whole Volume 0 interactions with Zero Yuta, faster than Yuki. Bada bing, bada boom. Hakari, once he gets in the Jackpot, just steamrolls her to oblivion and pillow punches her down. That's how I see the argument going. And I don't blame them, because once again, Yuki is one fight, and unfortunately, once you get that damage on her, she's kind of cocked, even if she heals, because I guess her cursed energy reserves is not that big. But let's see.
Downplay Geto, his body, his cursed energy, that's all Kenjaku's. And so with that in mind, we literally see basically the exact same scenario happen, except Yuta didn't have a blind spot to utilize. And even then, Geto turns around but is still slashed by Yuta's blade. At the very least, you'd have to argue that Volume 0 baby Yuta would be relative in speed to yes, relative to speed to Yuki. And then Yuta goes through multiple training.
And that's the thing. Once again, all that becomes questionable once you throw in Rika. And we always think of Yuta as the character, but Rika's there. We gotta think about Rika. Oh, and for those wondering, because I don't think I explained it, the reason Kenny and Geto are relative is because they're literally the same body. And you can't, like, the only thing you can make an argument is that, oh, Kenny knows more about cursed energy reinforcements because he's been around for longer. You can only bring so much potential out of a body. Now, I have a question for you. Who do you think is more skilled? Adult Sukuru Geto or Mei? Think about it. Now, do you think that adult Suguru Geto brought out the full potential of his body if Mei hard capped herself and had to go back and understand her Blackbird technique better? Yeah, unfortunately, JJK is one of those universes where your body does have a hard cap. It just, you cannot reinforce your body beyond a certain point. It's why Hakari doesn't have infinite AP or infinite Dura, despite having infinite cursed energy. There is just a cap. Hakari automatically hits it when he goes into Jackpot. And Yuta, like, the only weird thing is, though, I'd have to say Yuta hit it in 0, which isn't, like, too absurd. And also, like, Yuta gets stronger, but, like, does he, though? Like, and that may sound insane. That may be like, whoa, Pencil, what are you talking about? But, like, where does it say that Yuta got, like, exponentially stronger from his training arcs? You could have argued his entire time in Africa was just refining his technique. Getting a better understanding of domain expansion. Understanding his connection with Rika more. Training to get Rika back. Like, I'm like, it'd be absurd to say he already reached his limit, though. That's the only thing I agree with, but it's so unquantifiable. How much stronger is current Yuta than Zero Yuta? Can you tell me? I don't know. No, like, legit, no, like, I'm legit asking, like, can you tell me? Because I can't tell. Yeah, I have no idea. It's literally, and Rika throws the wrench into that. Once again, the most consistent argument I would make off the top of my dome piece, this is completely off script, but, like, you know, there's no script right now, obviously I'm just yapping. But still, the most consistent argument I could make, that would make sense of all of it, is that ultimately, Yuta in Zero, due to his natural bloodlust, ultimately did hit his soft cap in terms of percentage reinforcement. He kept increasing, he kept evolving, but after a certain point, he hit that cap, and Geto was able to keep up with that cap until to the point where Yuta decided, you know what, I literally can't beat bro. Let me do a death binding vow in order to get enough power through Rika in order to beat Geto. So, there's that. And then Yuta just never got stronger, he only got better. He got better at understanding his curse energy control, so he never broke his sword again. He got better at understanding how to utilize RCT offensively. He got better at his control over his curse technique and Rika. He got better at understanding his own conditions. And ultimately, he evolved as a fighter, but his stats didn't get better. And that's why ultimately Rika from Zero and Rika from the modern series don't necessarily show too much difference, and by proxy, Yuta doesn't scaling-wise. But I don't like that, because I want to believe Yuta's stronger. I don't really have, like, it's hard to say, other than time has passed, I don't know what proof I have. I can't quantify how much stronger Sendai Yuta is than Zero Yuta and Zero Yuta from Shinjuku Yuta. I can quantify their skill levels and their bags. Obviously, every single time we get a new version of Yuta, whether it's Zero, then Sendai, then... Well, I'd say it's Zero, then first reappearance, then Sendai, because he gets Scavenger Village and stuff like that, then Shinjuku. His bag gets deeper, his understanding gets better, he gets more experience. But, like, stat-wise... JDK is one of those series where it's like, it's hard to quantify. We don't have, like, numbers. We don't have multipliers. We don't have anything like that. I don't know. It's weird. I even go to sit here and, like, make any definitive argument or say that Yuta's weaker, because I don't believe that. I think Yuta got stronger. I just can't tell you by how much. And I can tell you I don't think Rika got stronger. If anything, I think she got weaker. Which just makes Geto stronger. Which I don't like either. It's like, trust me, I'm in like a 50-50 conundrum myself. The reason I haven't even finished that script that I'm working on is because I literally cannot make sense of the argument in my head. So help.
Going out of the country, and can you guess who Yuta is constantly compared to? Yes, my guy Kenji Hakari. Before we get into him, I'll finish talking about Yuki. While her power is completely out of this world, her durability isn't all that great. She tanked Kenjaku's sure hit that was disabled by Tengen, but then after a couple of hits that did little damage to Kenjaku, she reaches her limit. Of course, she has RCT, but even so, she loses a ton of output on her curse technique. And then Yuki literally gets turned into a donut after taking one mini Uzumaki. Not a condensed one, because that would have been stated, an actual mini Uzumaki. Things aren't looking too good for Yuki. Going into Hakari...
But still though, how do you quantify that, buddy? And I even, once again, I trust Gamblrr more. Gamblr's a better skill than me. I don't trust. I'm just saying this out of, like, legit questioning. It's not like Kenny does any damage to her with punches. Geto does more damage to JDK Zero Yuta with punches and hits of Playful Cloud than he does to Yuki. It's only the Uzumakis and the sure hit. So, the apex of Jujutsu and the secondary apex of Jujutsu that Yuki takes damage from. Can we really slander her for that? Who in verse, outside of like Sukuna and Gojo, are just flat out face tanking mini Uzumakis? Or face tanking Kenjaku's sure hit? Oh, like, I don't know. So I want to downplay Yuki's durability, but like, can I really though? Who's eating mini Uzumaki? I don't know how strong they are because I'm using Yuki, but that's the thing. I don't know. It's so vague and so funky. And in her defense, she eats one to the face. It's just that when she goes to reinforce her facing guards, Kenny hits her with a mix-up. Hits her with the deadliest high-low of all time and just blasts her guts open when she was expecting another shot to the face. This sounds wrong, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like she does eat one and then gets blasted by a second one in her gut when she's already damaged and super fatigued. So, like, I don't know. Once again, I'm interested to see. But then again, I kind of know how the scaling is going to go. And so far, I've been calling the video kind of accurately. Let's see.
In comparison to Yuki, Hakari has nothing in his arsenal that can compete with Star Rage. Simple as that, Yuki will always punch harder at her fullest. But then we enter the problem of speed. Of course, in an actual fight,
that is actually like a real deep. That was clean. Showing actual speed when you're talking about speed. Let him cook. I'm not sure if Heavy edits his videos himself or he has an editor, but I'm not even sure if that was intentional. That was like a good multi. That was clean. We'll see.
Hakari will always be the first one to open his domain. In it, he has so much cheese it's not even funny. He has pseudo spins to revert damage and different modes to guarantee him jackpot faster or slower. The only way Yuki will be able to kill Hakari will be if she can outpace his eventual jackpot. When Hakari enters Jackpot, while again he can't match her punches, Hakari isn't getting hit by any of them. He at the very least is just faster than her in Jackpot, but in character, Hakari would just directly take the attack that Yuki throws at him because his regeneration is imminent. In Jackpot, the only thing she can do to put him down is kick Garuda at his head and make it explode, which again is unlikely. It didn't even blitz Kenjaku. Hakari in Jackpot scales to Shinjuku Yuta, and his weaker version in Sendai was taking direct hits from Ryu's Granite Blast, in specific his mini ones. Given he has the greatest curse energy output of anyone else, is it really bold to assume Granite Blast is stronger than Uzumaki? No, because we literally see it overpower Rika's Love Beam that overpowered Uzumaki. With a little bit of brain power, if you want to downplay Hakari to the max, Hakari was scaled to the mini Granite Blast that scaled above mini Uzumaki that took Yuki out of the fight. Of course, Hakari isn't—
He may just be spitting. Hold on. Wait. Oh, sorry. But wait a minute. I didn't even think about that. See, this is why I watch these videos. My brain gets open. Actually, it's a good question. Was that scaly? Oh, my toes are curling a little bit. Let me think. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, like the only thing about Uzumaki that's questionable, and that's the thing. It's the stupid thing about Kenny and Geto. How strong is it? How strong is it? Because we've seen even Yuta's max output beams, they just get overpowered by like a weaker Ryu with his mini beams. But then Yuta's able to tank it? I don't know, that is weird. But then again, Ryu does, like, he holds the pose and he's like charging it up for a little bit. So I guess you could argue, like, maybe, because like it's clear that not all of Ryu's blasts have the same output. Like I think that'd actually be kind of ludicrous to say. Like, we have his big city wiping blast is presumably his strongest one. We have his little mini blast, his quick fire blast, his slightly charged up blast. It's like there's variance. But compared to mini Uzumaki, it's unknown. The only reason I'm like wondering back and forth about this, though, that's a pretty, yeah, we got that dome on. Whoa, not like that. But like, he low-key spit because like the only thing about Uzumaki is that it has variable AP, because we know the strength of the Uzumaki varies depending on the curses field into it. But not only do we not have any sort of AP for mini Uzumaki, like we don't know if it's weaker or stronger than the original. You could think it's more condensed because it's tinier and thusly more energy of the beam would be in a smaller place. But then again, who knows? We legit don't know how it works, and I don't think there's ever been an extra or data book statement to cover that. So, what's stronger, a mini Uzumaki or one of Ryu's casual beams? I would say Ryu's casual beams are stronger because Mr. Highest Output. I mean, weird that just a bunch of curses filled in, even if reduced down purely to curse energy, would be stronger than Ryu. So, but the issue is that more durable than Yuki's? Like, I wouldn't say, at the same time, this is gonna sound crazy, I wouldn't say that Ryu's mini blasts, as much as I glaze Ryu, I don't think his mini blasts are stronger than Yuki's AP. You get what I'm getting at here? So, the thing with Yuta is that off defensively, he's immaculate against Ryu. Ryu even straight up admits in their confrontation, it's like punching a water tank. What is this man made of? Like he sort of admits, physically just punching, it doesn't really do much to Yuta. And the issue with Yuta is that, sure, he's able to tank the blast, which would presumably be stronger than Ryu's punches, just because blast versus punch, just like a Kamehameha versus a fist. Like, sure, a fist could be stronger than a Kamehameha, but on average, that's coming from the same person, both at full power, the blast is going to be stronger. Then the issue is Yuta doesn't, he has the Dura, so by proxy, Hakari would have the Dura, since they're comparable, to eat Ryu's blast, but the AP is lacking. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are 3 things in the universe. What? 3? 4. 4 things! Sorry. There are 4 things in the universe. 5. Gosh darn it. There are 5 things in the universe that have ever compromised my glorious king Ryu Ishigori's durability. 1, his own attacks. And even then, they usually scuff him, but on that last one, it did do numbers to Broski. I ain't gonna lie to you. 2, Rika's AP. Rika has actually shown the capability to damage Ryu, just like hitting him. She's made him bleed before. Good stuff. Sky Manipulation Thin Icebreaker, because that's literally spatial manipulation. Spatial Manipulation Duraneg. So like, that's a little bit unfair, but it's true. It damaged him, but that's Spatial Manipulation Duraneg, so I don't give too much credit to that. But still, it is a thing that damaged him. And then Sukuna. His Dismantle, a casual one, which didn't do too much to Ryu, but it did cut him open. And then Cleave, obviously, noted for you, but that's another, like, Duraneg attack. So I can understand why that works. Yuta, you can go back and fact check me. He hits Ryu a bunch. He never does any damage to him. Even when Ryu's like super duper fatigued and just got hit by a thin icebreaker, in their physical exchange, Yuta does no damage to Ryu. So it'd be hard to argue that Hakari could do damage to Ryu. And by proxy, it's hard to argue that Hakari's punches have higher AP than Mini Uzumaki's still. And like Yuki does eat one. It's just that when her guard is down and she's caught off guard by Mini Uzumaki's in the first place, her guts get blown open. So defensively, yeah, you have a pretty solid argument for Jackpot Hakari against Geto. But offensively, we run back into the Hakari issue that we always have. Where's the AP? Where is it? Because it's not with Ryu. What's it?
Just punching through Yuki. However, with Hakari's speed and attack potency, these attacks will be heavy on Yuki. Her taking damage and regenerating will lower her own attack potency, and eventually Hakari's will just be outright stronger. So if these two fight 10 times, I'm giving Hakari the win 7 times out of the 10. Of course, the 3 times will be if Yuki manages to outpace Jackpot, but the other 7 is just Hakari beating her up. If push comes to shove, Hakari just completely outlasts her, but I don't even think it would come to that. There's also the black hole, but that's an automatic Yuki loss, so don't be talking about that in the comments.
Yeah, there's the black hole. But yeah, that's the thing. It really comes down to how you scale Yuki. If you say defensively Hakari's able to breach her durability, then yeah, unless Yuki lands a hit on his head while she's at full or near full output, it's not doing anything. But if she lands that first hit, Hakari's cooked. If Kenny is losing arms off one bit of contact, if Hakari is not round starting, if he dares breathes the same kind of air that Charles is breathing, or he was breathing against Charles where he doesn't immediately open domain, Yuki is cooking that man. And even then, while they're in, this could sound crazy, while they're in the simulation, she may cook him. Like while they're in domain waiting for Jackpot, if Hakari round starts Jackpot, right? And then Yuki's like, oh, but for one reason or another, she gets the sure hit information. She's like, okay, clashing with this man may not be the best thing to do. If she runs up and hits him while she's still at full output, I think he's dead. Because remember, Kashimo's hits against base Hakari was like, oh, okay, you know, you can make him bleed a bit and you can knock him around and then he could renewal. But like, we don't know what the limits of Hakari's renewal are. If you knock off both of his arms in Jackpot while he's in his domain, is he renewing? We don't know. So, and we don't know what happens if you knock his head off. And I think both are viable. I think it's not crazy to say that Suguru Geto and Kenjaku have better reinforcement and overall power than base Hakari. So like, he may be cooked even if he gets his domain off. That's just me, though. That's just me. I'd say it's just straight 50-50. Off my dome piece, like, I can see Hakari winning, especially in the longevity game. And exclusively through the longevity game because it was lacking AP. But at the same time, I can see Yuki swinging hard and fast enough to cook that man. But
Next up, we have Gojo, and I'm just gonna
you know the answer.
be completely honest and say Hakari is getting cooked. Gojo has been stated multiple times to be the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, which just blatantly puts him above Hakari. And if that isn't enough, Gojo also managed to one-shot Udaume, the same Udaume who fought Hakari for almost 40 chapters. So for this section of the video, rather than talking about who would actually win the fight, I'm gonna instead focus on the ways in which Hakari might be able to get through Infinity, and also if Hakari has any way to survive Gojo's domain. So firstly, when it comes to
No. He can't get through Infinity. And he can't survive Gojo's domain. He can clash with it. And in Jackpot, he may be able to survive it. It depends on what his brain does with the information. But, like, he probably could. But getting through Infinity? Hakari? Smells like some straight copium, but let's see.
Gojo's Infinity, there might actually be a way for Hakari to bypass it. We all know a domain short hit neutralizes defensive cut techniques, for example Infinity and outage configuration, but there are also some implications that just having a domain active is enough to bypass Infinity. We first see this in the fight between Gojo and Jogo. When Jogo opens his domain, he specifically mentions that inside the domain he'll be able to reach Gojo. The way Jogo words it makes it seem like the domain itself is making Infinity no longer active, and Gojo thus proceeds to confirm what Jogo said and that he will be able to go through Infinity. Though this is still pretty contentious since Jogo could have been referring to his short hit reaching Gojo rather than his Jujutsu as a whole. Me personally, I do think his statement implies Infinity is no longer active inside a domain, but again, it does come down to interpretation. The other time we see something similar happen is in the fight between Mahito and Mekamaru. This time, Mekamaru is able to nullify Mahito's outage configuration solely by using Simple Domain. Since Simple Domains don't actually have a short hit, it basically means Mekamaru's barrier itself is what's allowing him to damage Mahito despite his cut technique. Even though symbol domains are different from actual domain expansions, Mechamaru bypassing Idol Transfiguration does imply him creating a barrier is what makes it so he's able to hit Mahito. This should also work against Gojo's Infinity, since just like Mahito, it is a defensive curse technique which can be bypassed. If we take those two instances into account, I think it's very possible that Hakari inside his domain would be able to get through Infinity. If the barrier itself is what's neutralizing the technique, then Hakari inside Out of Death Gamble should also be able to damage Gojo. This doesn't really change the fight, and even if Hakari can...
I didn't think about it that way. It's an interpretation based on like a loose idea. It's possible. The only it would have to specifically be defensive techniques, and the Mechamaru example is a good example. So actually, maybe have you other? Yeah, I think he's spin. The only reason it feels so weird, but then again, in the Gojo vs. Sukuna fight, do we see that? It's not like because the way I understand it, the reason Infinity never gets shut down. When Gojo, say Gojo's, at least from my understanding of it, and feel free to correct me, maybe Heavywood's probably spit on this, I think about it, but correct me if I'm wrong. Off my dome piece, the reason Infinity does not work against domain expansions is because domain attacks do not hit. They don't exist until they hit you. Thusly, they have zero travel time. They spawn on you. And by proxy, it doesn't matter the infinite distance between you and the rest of the world if you, which exists in the world, are registered by the domain, which Gojo will be since he has curse energy, and thusly things appear on him. That's why Cleave always appeared on him whenever he was in domain. But then again, every single time his curse technique is shut down, he's able to use red, and the domain is still hitting him because it doesn't matter. Even if he has his curse technique active, it's always spawning immediately on him. But it could be possible, once again, because of the Mahito example. But we know symbol domain also exists to soften or neutralize techniques. But if it's symbol domain can do it, why not a full domain? Does it change any matchups for Gojo? Not really. Even crossroads matchups wouldn't really be changed by that. You still need like some sort of power negation or spatial manipulation. I think. Let's see.
Go through Infinity, you'd only be able to do so in base without Jackpot, but I do still think it's something interesting to note. The other thing I want to talk about is if Hakari could survive Gojo's domain, Unlimited Void. Now, the answer to this question is definitely pretty vague and mainly depends on your interpretation, but there are ways you could argue for Hakari surviving it. The way Unlimited Void works is that it sends an infinite amount of information into your brain, basically leaving whoever gets hit by it stun-locked and unable to do anything. We also know from the Sukuna fight that the information overload you receive from Infinite Void does in fact physically damage your brain, where it's stated only 10 seconds inside Unlimited Void resulting in Sukuna taking significant brain damage. Now, the way Hakari might be able to survive this would be mainly through Jackpot and his RCT. Hakari's RCT works differently to other characters in the way Hakari can actually heal himself subconsciously. In his fight against Kashimo, he's able to allocate and remove the poison from his body while not even being awake. And he's also able to dispel the cursed energy in his brain through his nose. Now, against Unlimited Void, this might be a bit of a stretch. I do think there's a possibility that Hakari's brain constantly healing itself could result in Unlimited Void's info dump being constantly dispelled from Hakari's brain. So, as his brain's getting overloaded with information, the RCT would keep healing his brain subconsciously, allowing Hakari to not take the full burn of Unlimited Void. Though this is mostly just headcanon, and I am giving Hakari the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, since even if Hakari could get through Infinity and survive Unlimited Void, it's a pretty one-sided fight in Gojo's favor. I just wanted to present some ways Hakari might have a chance, but even then, the fight isn't all that interesting, unlike the next matchup.
Okay, the rest of the video is gonna be Hakari. It's gonna be Hakari versus Yuta. But, yeah, it's like the funny thing is, I wonder how Hakari's brain would heal that. Would it just be like killing the brain cells that are affected by Limited Void and replacing them with new ones? Like, essentially, would he just be having consistent aneurysms and his brain is just like, and just turns it back off? It's like, no, you can't do that. RCT boy. And then it just RCT boys him? I guess that's how that works. Yeah, interesting. Never thought about it that way.
Yuta versus Hakari is probably the reason you press on this video. Yeah, I can see it on your face. Luckily, you'll get what you're looking for. Yuta Kozu is a supremely strong combatant, boasting the title of the second strongest modern sorcerer behind Gojo. He is one of Jujutsu Kaisen's greatest prodigies, and this claim is supported by the fact that his power stems from instinctive mastery of Jujutsu's highest forms of sorcery. He gained a domain expansion 1 year into being a sorcerer, he gained RCT in his first months, and became a special grade twice. Despite all this, his senpai Kenji Hakari is still compared to him by the narrative, by Yuta, and by our favorite character, Mr. Six Eyes himself, Gojo Satoru. When it comes down to it, these two are neck and neck at full power. In chapter 146, Yuta directly says that Hakari on the roll, referring to Jackpot, is stronger than him. Maki of course claims his cap, but at the very least, there is relativity there. Even as early as chapter 11, both Hakari and Yuta, who we knew had immense strength from volume 0, were stated to be able to reach the heights of Gojo one day by the man himself. There's also the fact that in chapter 234 it stated Gojo said they should only help him if he becomes weaker than Hakari and Yuta. These two are extremely relative, and just because we haven't seen the things Hakari can do post time skip doesn't mean that whatever Yuta is doing.
Okay. The biggest thing that is contentious about this is when Yuta says it, does he mean his full power? Does he mean that? Like full 5-minute timer manifested Rika. Does Yuta, like, the thing is, there's the Gojo statement, and Gojo presumably knows about fully manifested Rika and all that. Like, he knows that. He has to know that. Right? If that's the case, then yeah. Then realistically, it becomes a question of how badly does Hakari dog walk Yuta? Because if it truly is full power, all out, Yuta, that would include Rika. Because like, everyone who would be making statements, calling them relative, would know about that. Yuta would know about his full power. Gojo would know about Yuta's full power. And Kenny would have a vague idea, but would probably consider Yuta's full power, which would include Rika. Right? Because like we as a fandom don't separate Yuta and Rika. So in universe they probably wouldn't either. Considering Yuta's power is so reliant on Rika. Like literally he can't use his curse technique properly without her. Or at least not to the same degree that he does without her. Because the only argument you can make to disavow that statement is the argument I typically make in order to support the statement, which is kind of funky, but like hear me out. I say, because I'm in the camp that it goes Yuta, Hakari, and Jackpot, Rika, in terms of stats, right? Because it just wouldn't, because by the logic of curse energy reinforcement, Yuta, who has a smaller and weaker build than Hakari, but boundless cursed energy, would, by proxy, be weaker than Hakari, who has a better physical physique and infinite cursed energy. But then you have Rika, who just... Do you see the gains on Rika? Do you see the hand size on Rika? Her hand is the same size as Sakari's entire body. You know the gains are immaculate, and she also has infinite curse energy. So, like, then by proxy, Rika would be stronger. But if Hakari is meant to be relative to both of them, then that means he needs to be relative to Rika. But if he's relative to Rika, then he should dog walk Yuta. Because the thing is, the only thing Yuta could really do, he would have to have the 5-minute timer on, and immediately, like, Jacob's Ladder right out of Hakari's domain, somehow. Or Jacob's Ladder and destroy Hakari's domain. He would have to immediately activate that technique and shut it down. Because notably, I always was confused about this. I'll admit, it was just me not reading. The reason Hakari does not use the balls and doors in Jackpot is because his curse technique is literally on burnout. The infinite curse energy is a byproduct of his curse technique. It is not his curse technique itself. It takes 4 minutes and 11 seconds for Hakari to activate domain again, and that's when the round ends, because that's when his curse technique comes back. That's why he doesn't use the balls indoors. That's why he's just a punch and kick merchant. He literally can't be anything else unless he learns how to fire curse energy. So in that case, Jacob's Ladder wouldn't do anything to regular Hakari. We see at least a weaker output version of it not really do anything to people reinforced by curse energy. It didn't shut down the curse energy reinforcement or anything. So if Hakari gets jacked by against Yuta, he could just beat the brakes off him. If we assume he's relative to full power Yuta, which would mean Rika. Which would give him relativity to Rika, not just Yuta. And based on Ryu's statement and what we literally see on page and panel, Rika is just stronger than Yuta. Like, all around, and they're at least relative in speed. So Yuta would just keep getting bully bagged and take extreme amounts of damage, and Hakari would be boxing with Rika. And it's not like any of Yuta's regular attacks, unless he goes straight for the dome piece. But even then, if he goes straight for the dome piece with a thin icebreaker, maybe. But it'd probably be healed as it's happening. Which is crazy to think, but probably. Am I turning around? That's the thing. I'm thinking of it going with full power Yuta as a statement. Then I could easily see how if we go with that route, then Hakari could win. Let's see what Gamblrr has to say. I'm interested to see his take. I think he has done this battle before, though. I think he does say. Did he say Yuta? I think I even covered that battle. I think he says Yuta wins. Oh, tell me don't be. But let me see.
Just puts him above him. When comparing these two, I think the best thing to do is to compare their fights between Kashimo and Ryu. Before you go raging in the comments, yes, this is pre-time skip, but the fact does still stand that after the time skip, they're still extremely relative. I mainly want to focus on Hakari's encounters in Jackpot compared to Yuta's encounters in his 5-minute mode. If you actually go and reread these fights, Hakari and Yuta are almost always dominating their opponents, and on the off chance that they aren't, they immediately retaliate. Hakari and Kashimo in chapter 188 started off the jackpot round mostly relative, with Hakari taking heavy blows from Kashimo, who attempts to kill him during his immortality. But immediately when Hakari decides to pick up the pace because jackpot is ending, he literally blisses Kashimo and dominates him in hand-to-hand combat. Kashimo even knows that he's moving even faster, and it's because Hakari decided to try even harder. Yuta on the other hand mostly does the same thing, as when he engages with Ryu, he's able to match it with Love Beam but then outwit him by using Sky Manipulation. If you notice, these two just aren't comparable to their opponents when they go full power, but what about the path to...
Okay, now wait a minute. On both ends. I do agree. Hakari going full out in jackpot towards the end of it. But then again, I need to reread. I need to do another reread of a reread. But I'm pretty sure he gets a curse energy bonus towards the end of the rounds. Right? I think. Because that's how he comes in and like does those crazy last minute moves. Because he has the curse energy bonus again. But then again, he already has infinite curse energy. Well, the curse energy bonus even do. I don't know. But I think, like, once again, I don't think there's really any moment where Yuta dominates Ryu. Like, though admittedly, Ryu doesn't, like, that's the thing. Unless it's with Granite Blast, Ryu doesn't necessarily do that much damage back. Both of them are so tanky. And ultimately, when I'm thinking of Sendai off the top of my dome piece, it is Ryu versus Yuta in hand-to-hand at first. And Yuta loses badly. He gets knocked away and styled on. He literally can do no damage to Ryu and then gets knocked away. Then he gets hit with a Granite Blast. He palms it, but then again, it's a baby Granite Blast. So it's hard to argue he could palm full power ones. And then, after that, Earl comes back in. After hitting Ryu with a Granite Blast, which probably weakens Ryu a bit. And then Ryu fights Rika, who we know is stronger than Yuta by Ryu's own statements and just general logic of the series. Then they all go domain. Yuta's fine, because he has Rika consistently refilling his curse energy supply. So he goes out, he leaves the domain fine. Like, basically, he spent no energy on the domain, because Rika's still fueling him with his curse energy, because the full timer's out, is still on. But Ryu lost a whole bunch of curse energy, burning it on domain. And then, they have another encounter, post-domain. Yuta kicks away Uro. Then, Kurushi comes in, hits Uro again. And then Ryu one-shots Uro. Or not one-shots, but he knocks out Uro. And Kuro gets one-shot by Yuta. Then they go into their final clash. Ryu overpowers Yuta in the beam clash. They go relative in hand-to-hand. Then, ultimately... No. Because then Ryu palms Yuta's own blast. Or no, Rika's blast. Rika fully manifested, awakened Rika's blast. Palms it with basically no damage. Actually less damage than Yuta took from Ryu's casual little mini Granite Blast. Then Yuta Sky Manipulations Ryu. They fight. After Rika comes in and gives Ryu a bonk on the dome piece, which actually does do some damage to him. Then Yuta Thin Icebreakers. One of those two in order. So Durin Egg plus Rika, which is stronger than Yuta. And then they go even again. And then Ryu gets finally taken out by his own Granite Blast. So I wouldn't, like, honestly, Hakari does just have a better performance against Kashimo, I'd say, than Ryu. Because Ryu, he gives Yuta a good run for his money. And honestly, if Ryu hadn't burnt a whole bunch of energy on domain expansion and hadn't been hit by his own Granite Blast initially, likely giving Yuta the idea to do the same thing in the end, it's like, I don't know. I don't really think... yeah, I'd say Ryu would have a better chance. He'd probably still lose, though, overall.
Said full power. I'll let Heavy talk about that.
So as Gamblrr said, Yuta and Hakari are definitely implied to be relative to each other in some way, both via feats and the overall narrative of the story. However, I think where a lot of people have an issue with Hakari is the conditions he needs to meet to get to the level of Yuta. While Yuta can just go into his 5-minute mode or activate his domain whenever he wants, Hakari has to actually hit a jackpot, and this is where Hakari's biggest weakness comes from, his vulnerability in between jackpots. He essentially has to hit jackpots if he wants to fight top tiers, so how likely is it for him to actually do it versus Yuta? Well, it is very likely. First of all, Win Hakari in base should be able to hold his own for a pretty long time against Yuta. Base Hakari was able to survive against Uraume and Kashimo, two people who in character are way more likely to go for the kill, and two people who also scaled to Yuta. Because of this, I think it's fair to say Yuta is probably not killing Hakari before he hits his initial jackpot. I mean, not only is base Hakari just overall pretty strong, but his domain also grants him an amp, and things like rerolls just make it overall extremely hard to kill him. With all that included, I personally do think Hakari would be able to survive long enough to hit his initial jackpot. But there is also another way Yuta could prevent Hakari's jackpot, and that would be by opening his own domain. Now this part of the video is extremely contentious since Gege makes it pretty ambiguous as to how a domain clash between these two would go. Yuta has recently gotten many statements hyping up his domain, such as his barrier technique being praised by Sukuna, and now we're getting the reveal that he improved through the switch training with Gojo. However, Hakari is the only character in the entire manga to get a statement specifically regarding his advantage in Tug of Wars. Not only is Hakari's domain extremely refined as it's an extension of his curse technique, but he also traces harmless short hit with faster activation speed and a boost in Tug of Wars. While Yuta's domain statements are mostly referring to barrier technique, Hakari's statements specifically mention Tug of Wars. And because of that, I do think if Hakari and Yuta were to domain clash, Hakari would probably come out on top, and this is where Hakari's main win from comes from. If he's able to be Yuta in a domain clash, the fight goes extremely in his favor. But even if he can't, as long as base Hakari is inside his own domain, he should be safe from Yuta's own domain. And as soon as Hakari hits jackpot, he should also be safe because of his RCT. Even though Hakari doesn't have the highest AP, he should still be able to damage Yuta given the fact they're implied relative. Which means in the fight between the two, given enough time, it's possible Hakari would force Yuta into running out of CE eventually. We saw in Sendai it was implied Yuta's own curse energy was already dropping, so if he's fighting Hakari and constantly using RCT and domain expansion, the same thing would also happen. I'm not saying this means Hakari would win the fight, I'm just stating what is possibly his most definitive win con. The truth is, we don't really know how a domain clash between the two would go, so I personally think the fight could go either way.
The biggest issue with them domain clashing is what stays. Like, clearly the sure hits would cancel out. But that, honestly, that could lead to something bad for Hakari. But considering, once again, I don't blame them, they don't show the statement, and it's not in the English translation. In the Viz translations or even the TCBs, the statement for Hakari's domain being good in domain expansions is a Japanese exclusive statement. I forget, I think I've seen the scan like once or twice, but I don't blame the editor or Heavy himself not finding the statement because it is weird and difficult to find. And once again, it's in Japanese, so it had to be translated. But the thing is, right? We see with domain clashes of people of equal status, equal refinement, aspects of both of their domains remain, and their sure hits cancel out. But if we go with the idea that Hakari's domain is meant to compensate for sure hits clashing, and is meant to be good for Tug of Wars, then that means likely his domain sure hit would still go off, and then like the trains would still spawn, those illusions and the buttons they have to hit would probably still spawn. But does Yuki keep his swords, and is Rika in there? That's the big thing, right? Because it is going to be base Hakari versus not just Yuta, also Rika. And while I'm willing to slop off Jackpot Hakari and give some glaze to base Hakari, I'm not sure if he can beat Yuta and Rika at the same time. Especially, even if Yuta's sure hit is canceled out, if the swords are still scattered everywhere, all he needs to do is pick up Sky Manipulation once against base Hakari. Have Rika hold him in place, boom! Sky Manipulation is dome off. Or just Sky Manipulation is arm off. Once again, we don't know what the limits of the refreshes and continuations are, but I think it's bold to assume that he could, without Jackpot, continuation or refresh his whole head, or his whole arm, or his whole upper torso. Once again, Yuta with his swings is able to bisect Sukuna, well, not bisect Sukuna, but tear off Sukuna's arms. And with his yanks, able to tear out Sukuna's tongue. So like, his slashing AP and his regular AP aren't garbage. And if Rika's there holding him, and plus if the sword's imbued with a curse technique, if the swords are still there, that's the big thing. If the swords are still around and they still contain infinite curse techniques, and he picks up Cleave, Hakari's cooked. He picks up Sky Manipulation, Hakari's cooked. He picks up, heck, maybe even Curse Speech, Hakari may be cooked if he's not ready for it. That's the thing. A lot of Yuta's arsenal is pretty lethal. The only thing that would suck if he kept picking up like Charles' technique, that'd be trash. But like, almost everything else, he could legit run up to base Hakari, pick up a katana, swing on him, and tell him to, I don't know, pass out. He probably would. Once again, the only thing with Yuta versus Hakari is that Yuta's probably not going for the kill. So like, he'd probably just tell Hakari to go to sleep. And then Hakari, who wasn't reinforcing his use of Curse Energy because he wasn't expecting Yuta to pull out Curse Speech, goes, and his domain shuts down. And he wins. So like, even in domain, that's the thing about Yuta versus Hakari. Well, I can definitely see if you give Hakari the AP, and you give the relativity to Rika, plus Yuta, and you give the full power, you give all that, then I can definitely see Hakari winning if he hits Jackpot. But there, with the time it took him to hit Jackpot initially against Charles, I could see an issue where Yuta, if Rika gets trapped in the domain as well, just works him. And at the same time, this could sound crazy, if Yuta is trapped in the domain alone, and Hakari domains, then Yuta doesn't even have the domain if Rika's outside. Rika will just punch the barrier. Sure, Yuta's domain has gotten better and more resistant to external damage, presumably because he did switch training and was in Gojo's body and performed small ball himself. But nothing about Hakari's barrier seems to be reinforced like that. Remember, the only reason Rika herself didn't come in and shatter the Sendai barrier, the Tri barrier, is because Kuroshi's reincarnation had distracted her with the curse energy enhanced cockroaches. If they weren't there, what stops Rika from just shattering the domain from the outside? And then Hakari's really cooked, because his curse thing is going to be on burnout. He's not going to be in jackpot. He's going to be facing either unmanifested Rika, who dog walks base Hakari, or Yuta plus unmanifested Rika, who dog walks base Hakari. So, like, I don't know. Even still, even giving Hakari his most generous glaze, if he does not start in jackpot, he probably still loses more often than he does. More often than he wins, at least. He would have to get an instant jackpot, which is possible on a roll, but seemingly not at round start. But let's see.
It's also possible for you to skill Hakari in between his jackpots, so if you think he can do that, then yeah, he would win the fight. But if you don't think that's the case, then the fight becomes very debatable, and in the end, it just comes down to your personal interpretation.
For this fight, we have the wild card, Kenjaku. Kenjaku is a funny case because I think everyone respects his prowess but never realizes that the thing that makes him so dangerous is actually his experience as a sorcerer. He has top 2 barrier skill, he has immense knowledge on curse techniques, he has reversal techniques, RCT, and implies to have domain counters like Hollow Whisker Basket and Simple Domain. It's all this stuff that makes Kenjaku so crazy. But when it comes to an actual battle like hand to hand or speed, he really isn't all that. Reminder that this isn't Kenjaku's fault, this is Geto's fault. Did you know Gege said Kenjaku would have trouble taking in Mahito and Jogo through curse spirit manipulation? Kenjaku would have trouble whittling down those 2 disaster curses. I truly think this is because of his lack of stats. Stats we'll go into right now.
That's so, and I hate that statement. It is so weird. The reason I say it's so weird is because that implies that somehow Mahito and by proxy Shibuya Yuji are at all relative to Kenny. At all relative to Kenny. Which if you have any sort of concept of JDK scaling, makes no sense. Like Jogo, I can, like, if we slop off Jogo, if we get on our knees, we unzip those baggy pants and take his whole mountainous volcano meat down our throats, then maybe we can glaze Jogo a little bit. Especially if you, like, assume he's relative to the full speed Nobito, you know, give him speed, give him a domain, like, you can glaze Jogo a little bit. But Mahito? Oh, but pencil. If Mahito was at full power and Yuji wasn't assisted and didn't land that last Black Flash, Gege said Mahito would have torn Yuji's... It's still Shibuya Yuji! Who's trash? Like, not trash, but by end of series standards or top tier standards, Yuji, by the time of the end of Shibuya, is like a solid mid tier. If that. It's why I always it's always why I always clown on Higuruma. Because, buddy, you were struggling with no cursed energy, Yuji? Struggling. Oh, you trash, G. Like, that's the same thing. I don't like that statement because it doesn't make sense. Because you know what that does? How weak is Volume 0 Rika then? If he's struggling with that, but then Geto's out here 2v1ing Volume 0 Yuta and fully manifested Volume 0 Rika, what do you mean? Like it feels so funky. It smells funky. Like, I hate that statement, but it's so real. I know where that scan. I think it's a volume extra scan. I think I've seen it before. It's real. It's not even like the Japanese statement for Hakari's domain where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trust that a lot of people have said this, and I've seen the scan at least in Japanese, and I've seen it translated, so like I can go with that. No, this is just a thing that's like in the English volumes of the manga. I think it's either in the English volumes of the manga or it's in an interview that I've seen translated a bunch of times. Like, it's so annoying, it's so funky. But I know the Mahito fans love it because that just upscales their boy. I'm out here fighting for my life trying to kick Mahito at the top 10, and you can make arguments that he's easily top 10 depending on how you scale Kenny. And by proxy, Mahito. Because Kenny would have trouble wearing them down. It doesn't say he would lose. Gege doesn't say he would lose. But the fact that he struggles at all is ludicrous. And I ain't talking about the musician, dog. But let's see. I'm assuming, once again, we're going to continue the argument. Relative stats. The only thing I could see them giving Kenny the dub for is the moment Hakari opens Jackpot, Kenny opens his own domain, his domain shatters Hakari's. Hakari's cooked. And be like, well, pencil. The domain's an inanimate object. It won't be attacked. It's cursed energy. Domains target things with cursed energy. The reason why Maki would be immune to Kenny's technique is that we don't know if it attacks inanimate objects that don't have cursed energy, like Sukinus does. That's what the Dismantle and Malevolent Shrine is for. But for Kenny's domain, it just targets cursed energy. Which is why Maki and Toji would likely be immune to that, but they would not be immune to Sukinus. So, Kenny domains, Hakari domains, base Hakari's trying to hit Jackpot, Suddenly his domain shatters from the outside because it takes one hit of Kenny's sure hit, which is affecting outside of the domain. Hakari loses. So like, bada bing, bada boom. You don't even have to really go into the Rika stuff. But let's see.
One thing I will say is that Kenjaku is at the very least faster than Urami. Something people like to use against them is the reaction to Piercing Blood, but the fact of the matter is, Urami knew of Piercing Blood but didn't know what it did. Regardless of that fact, they still managed to block it. Kenjaku on the other hand knew literally everything about it because Choso was his son, even knowing that it's only fast when you first send it. Urami's reaction here isn't an anti-feed by any means, and upon finding out its contents, like poison, Urami wouldn't just outright block to gauge what it is. This conversation is relevant to this video because Hakari is fighting Urami right now and has been for a very long time. But the thing is, Jackpot Hakari as we see it in chapter 245 just dominates them. There is no instance where Urami is able to damage Hakari when he doesn't let them. At the beginning of the fight, instead of thinking in his head that he's cooked, he said it out loud to let Urami know that he thinks he's finished. That's why they say game over. They think that Hakari knows he's finished. Notice how in the first page Hakari sees the attack coming, but there isn't a spark anywhere in his reaction. It's because Hakari never gets blitzed by it, he lets it hit him. If you think this is cope, in the next couple pages Hakari blisses Urami with his literal regeneration, and you see the spark in the reaction because they got blitzed. So Hakari doesn't scale to Urami in speed as much as people want to insinuate. Of course, Hakari isn't Gojo levels above them because the fight wouldn't be this long if that was the case, but Hakari is just faster. Kenny is in the body of a guy who got blitzed by baby Yuta, and Shinjuku Yuta, a Yuta 2 training arcs later, is stated relative to Hakari. I don't think it's far-fetched to assume Hakari and Jackpot would be...
In Kenny's defense, was disoriented by Tagawa's technique, and also got hit with Boogie Woogie, and also was not expecting you to fall off the sky. Alright? Like, I always... That's not a blitz. That's like everything going right for Yuta and everything going wrong for Kenny. Alright? Alright, come on now. That was nowhere near a full power Kenny who was ready to deal with Yuta. And he got Boogie Woogie. He literally got his cheeks switched up by the cheek switcher himself. Got my boy King for that. But let's see.
Just a tiny bit faster than Kenjaku, even if you want to downplay him to the highest of extremes. The problem here is how Hakari gets to Jackpot.
He doesn't.
Hakari would, again, be the first to expand his domain, but Kenjaku is that guy. With an open domain and Hakari's domain being the only domain in the entire series with a statement about tug of wars, at the very least we can say that they be evenly matched. In the domain, Kenjaku would have to box for Hakari, and we see that base Hakari could come out of his domain unscathed by Urami. No hand-to-hand combat is defeating Hakari in that domain, that's for sure. And so in Jackpot, it all comes down to Kenjaku's battle IQ. We see in chapter 239, Kenjaku cuts off reverse curse technique from Hazunoki. The thing is though, Hakari is aware of when people try to take reverse curse technique out of his arsenal. In chapter 186, when Kachimo's light...
Oh, so they don't even address it. That's a little funky. I mean, I get it because we don't see it, but like, just once again, it's kind of like the whole Hakari being stronger than Yuta thing makes sense because of the whole what we know of the series. Same thing for Kenny. I do think that's a little. I mean, maybe no, there's not much time within the video. I don't think he's gonna mention it, but yeah, technically, for all intents and purposes, womp little bro. Well, not like that, but like, Kenny, no, like the scenario goes something like this. Hakari's like, oh, I'm fighting Kenjaku. All right, domain expansion, and then Kenny's gonna be like, oh, you expanded your domain. Yeah, you're better than that other special grade I fought. Domain expansion. And then the moment Hakari goes to do anything, his domain pops. Because it's a cursed energy construct. Meaning it has cursed energy. Meaning to be targeted by Kenny's domain. Sure, it's good in tug of wars. So inside the domain, I don't think Hakari's going to be hit by a Kenny's sure hit. Absolutely. But outside the domain, boop. And then Hakari never hits his jackpot. And then it's base Hakari versus the same guy with stats relative to Geto. And a bunch of vague curses. I give that to Kenny. Especially considering, in this context, Kenny would not have his domain shut down. Remember, the only reason Kenny's domain shut down against Yuki, and the reason she survived, is because of the fact that Tengen did stop his technique by taking away the entire area the barrier was based in. But, not that. So, like, I don't know. I don't think Hakari beating Kenny, because I don't see him getting jackpot. If you start him in jackpot, and you do the right kind of scaling, then of course. But I don't think he's getting jackpot.
His aim for his head, Hakari moves out of the way, sacrificing his arm instead. Hakari wouldn't just let Kenjaku enter a couple cursed spirits into his neck. While Hakari might be reckless because he has RCT, he isn't stupid. You think Urami hasn't tried to go for his head this entire fight, especially given that they have RCT themselves? It's a ridiculous claim. And so this fight honestly would just go either way, but with Kenjaku's versatility and battle IQ, I'd give him the win 6 times out of 10.
As always, if you enjoyed watching the video, please make sure to like, subscribe to mine and the rest of Gamblrr's channels if you haven't already.
Of course.
He makes great content for both One Piece and JJK, and yeah, he helped me a ton with making this video. We also recorded a different version of this video on his channel, where instead of Hakari, we talk about how Kashima would do against the special grades, so make sure you guys go watch that. Other than that though, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Alright, 2252, 2252. Is that? Yeah, beautiful. Alright. W video, and it went exactly how I thought it would. I forget what I said, what they would do with Kenny. But, like, I think it makes sense. Once again, they opened my eyes, just with their previous video, they opened my eyes to Kashima and Hakari scaling it a bit, that I hadn't really thought about it. And I just accepted the statements at this point. So, like, I'm down with it. So, like, I ain't even gonna knock their hustle. They were spit. But, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please check out the link to the original video. It'll be in the link in the description down below. It's much shorter than this video. Sorry, I was yapping like crazy because I was on a whole bunch of theory, a whole bunch of scaling. Bada bing, bada boom. But the link to Wrestle Gamblr's channel and Heavyweigh's channel will, of course, be in the description down below. Also, think, brain blast. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave too much luck. TML. Too much luck in the comment section down below. I did thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on every video second of the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you support me for as low as $1 a month. You think exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Those perks include the live reactions, regular series I happen to review, ad-free variations of all my videos, and becoming a $25 Patreon or a $25 member. You can order whatever video you want. Also, I do a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below where you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 20 these for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Zara, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Brandon Payne, Glacier XZ, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 members, A+A, Ignil Lind, Kevin Encarnacion, Midnight Lord 21, and Sean. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 members, Fine, Austin Wimberly, Uchiha, and Yuki Ally. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, AZ Void, J Warrior, and Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons, Overlord Zero, Waki Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a final gracious gargantuan thank you to our $100 That Guy with a Pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.